Stuck in an emotional limbo, I can't shake my ex's words. I'm not ready and you're just not what I want. After years of love, breakups, and self-discovery, I'm haunted by the past while exploring a new relationship that might just be my escape. Can I finally heal? TLDR, I, a 42-year-old male, cannot forget my 42-year-old female ex after a nearly 5-year relationship filled with emotional ups and downs. I know she is not good for me, and all logic suggests I should move on, but I simply cannot. I also shared this in the Toxic Relationships forum, but it is quite lengthy, and I suspect not many are in the mood to read my story. English is not my first language, so please forgive any lack of coherence. Here we go. First, I want to emphasize that I do not blame her for anything. I consider myself the antagonist. It is primarily my fault. My inability to understand, actively listen, believe, and take into account what she was telling me, along with my failure to recognize the red flags that were clear signs of trouble. We are both 42 years old, we will both be 43 in August, and have a 14-year-old son and a 13-year-old daughter from previous relationships. Background: 5 years ago when we first met, I had just ended my 12-year relationship and she had just left her 20-year relationship. I wanted to end my relationship due to my ex's abusive behavior, impulsive, violent, manipulative, anxious attachment, and extreme jealousy, while her divorce came as a shock after a heated argument with her husband. Approximately 5 to 6 months later, her husband's daughter was born following an affair with an office colleague, and they moved into my girlfriend's old home. We met online on a dating site during late summer and connected very quickly from our first real date. I can honestly say I had never felt such attraction for anyone before. It felt as though I had been searching for her since the beginning of time and had finally discovered my soulmate. Little did I realize that she was unknowingly pushing all my buttons, my savior complex and my fear of abandonment, coupled with my previous 12 years of dealing with an anxious attachment while she was avoidant. All the excitement, the rapid heartbeat, and the butterflies in my stomach were actually manifestations of my anxiety flooding in like a freight train, coupled with waves of endorphins in her presence. Although I have never taken heavy drugs, I imagine that this is similar to experiencing euphoria followed by depression. She explicitly told me that she was not fine, not healed, and not ready to enter another relationship. However, who was I to listen to her and believe her? I painted a picture of a perfect relationship and envisioned her as the perfect woman, eager to dive headfirst into a relationship. During our second date, she spent 3 days in my apartment while our children were with our ex-spouses. I would describe this date as complete, fulfilling, perfect, and ultimately addictive, especially since we had just met and her birthday was approaching, with plans to spend 2 days at one of her friends' vacation houses. I liken this experience to the initial drop on a roller coaster. After those 3 days of love, I had almost 2 days of no contact, just a few messages, as she was in an area with poor cell reception. I felt abandoned and heartbroken. Imagine how damaged I was at that time. We had the same child custody schedule 1 week with us and 1 week with our ex-spouses. Fast forward 2 to 3 months after a perfect vacation at the seaside. Out of the blue, during a phone call, she mentioned she was considering ending the relationship. I felt as though the sky was falling, and it took me only 10 minutes to reach her apartment. I know, to ask for an explanation. The reason was that she was starting to love me, her words, which was not what she had wanted. What a ride! I convinced her that it was not in our best interest to end things and that we should continue to see where life takes us, as I was madly in love with her. This pattern persisted for a while. Sweet, memorable moments when I felt incredibly loved. For instance, this was my first relationship where we shared a bath, and she gently washed my hair with such care and sensuality, followed by very low moments, her struggles with depression, withdrawing from everything and everyone, haunted by memories of how her ex had destroyed her vision of their future together. COVID-19 struck and I contracted it from her. She recovered in 3 days while I took 2 weeks to feel better. As was the case for everyone, we were required to stay indoors during the lockdown, and I spent it alone at home during the Christmas season. That was when I began online psychotherapy, hitting a new low. This experience opened my eyes. The psychologist told me I was trapped in this relationship, and my attachment was akin to drug addiction. We had multiple sessions where I began to understand the childhood fears and events influencing my behavior. I had always acted logically and based on arguments, so he suggested that I create a pros and cons list regarding this relationship. The list revealed no match, and when I weighed the results, any rational person would consider it far more painful than fulfilling. Nevertheless, I was never able to move in a rational direction. In short, over the years, we experienced 2 or 3 breakups initiated by her, as I was not what she wanted. She compared me several times to her ex-husband who had cheated on her. He earned more money, was more cunning, and could give her multiple orgasms, while I rarely managed to provide even one despite my genuine efforts. Our sexual encounters typically lasted about 30 minutes excluding foreplay, but apparently that wasn't enough. Additionally, she was not in favor of oral sex. Throughout our time together, she allowed me to do so a maximum of 5 or 6 times. She performed oral sex on me a few times. I was her first, but this remained a significant psychological challenge for her. My deep affection for her and desire to see her happy led to feelings of frustration, even causing me to secretly take erection pills to extend our sexual activity. By the way, I have a normal size and duration, and previous partners had regular orgasms. This issue with sex drove me to try and compensate in other ways. I was exceedingly caring, perhaps excessively, as she remarked that I was not her father, provided gifts, brought flowers for every occasion, and just because, paid for all our vacations, planned surprise city breaks, and engaged in other thoughtful gestures. This was not sufficient, as my negative habits outweighed my positive ones. I often forgot things, as it is difficult for me to focus on multiple topics simultaneously. For instance, while driving, there are times I may fail to concentrate on what you're saying, which could lead me to forget your response and inadvertently ask the same question again that same day. I know, annoying. I was not generous enough. It seemed that gifts and vacations were not adequate, as she sometimes expected me to pay for her car maintenance. I was already handling her car during checkups or pick up shopping expenses, reminding me that she had been unaware of the cost of food and maintenance while married. I told her I would take on such responsibilities if we were married and living together, but since we were not, I found her expectations absurd. We discussed several times. Actually, I did moving in together to a larger apartment with our children, and she had 3 conditions. 1, to stay in her same neighborhood so her daughter could be close to her friends. 2, the apartment had to be new or recently refurbished since she despised moving in and having to renovate afterward. And 3, I would be responsible for all expenses. I agreed to this and was working toward it. Another drawback was that I did not educate my son properly. While I never accepted this notion considering I spend significant time with him, we talk frequently, and I cook nutritious meals for him. Everyone else who knows me believes I am an excellent father except for her. But there is always room for improvement, right? By the way, during vacations with the kids, we had a few. She always slept with her daughter and I slept with my son. We shared intimacy at most with a kiss here and there. Yes, I admit my son did not take well to her. I can attribute some blame to her for this, and I refused to force him to love her, but he always tolerated and respected her. I even had a few arguments with him over this, which I now regret. One more thing, she is not a deep sleeper, and I sometimes snore not loudly, but enough to keep her awake if she wakes up at night. I tried numerous strategies to solve this problem, staying awake longer, sleeping on my stomach, even a mouthpiece that caused soreness in my teeth. Most nights I ended up sleeping on the couch. What finally worked were earplugs for her, but she was unhappy about them, having experienced ear pain at one point. In any case, we were not consistently sleeping together. Keep in mind, we never moved in together. At best, we shared a bed for 1 week, following a week with the children at each of our apartments. What about her? I love her mainly for how I feel around her. She has the most beautiful smile, is intelligent, remains calm even during conflict. We maintained calmness, is brunette and petite. I am not tall either, and I appreciate this factor. And she has a beautifully proportioned body. Now for the negatives, she has an uncanny ability to see the worst in everyone, is stuck in old-fashioned beliefs. The man is the provider and responsible for her happiness, and she is not very open-minded in bed and is extremely demanding and difficult to please. You might wonder what she offers. Well, I am unsure. She has her own job, car, and apartment. I would be content with just receiving her love. Additionally, she sometimes displays avoidant behavior, which has always irked me as I find her icy demeanor troubling. She becomes an entirely different person, and I barely recognize her. Where do we stand now? We have been separated since the beginning of the year. It was her decision. She told me she was unhappy in this relationship, that she had tried for several years and that I had changed over the years. I genuinely believe I have changed for the better, especially for my own well-being. Accepting this was extremely difficult for me. I still do not believe I have fully processed it deep down. We have still spoken during this time. We even had sex a few times as friends. But I finally mustered the courage to inform her that I can no longer do this, as it brings me immense pain afterward and revives memories of our early days. Regardless, we have continued to speak a few times to settle some matters. In the meantime, over these past months, I started conversing with a neighbor across the street, a divorced 38-year-old woman with a 7-year-old son. More accurately, we have spent several nights together and are planning a short vacation next month, just the two of us. She is intelligent, attractive, and very interested in me. It has been some time since I have felt cared for, and it has been a long time since a woman has taken the initiative. I am not accustomed to this, and I am uncertain how I feel about it. Additionally, I never wake her up with my snoring, and I consistently bring her to multiple orgasms. However, if I may make a comparison, I feel as though I am like my ex-girlfriend at the start of our relationship, and this woman resembles how I was back then. God, I hope I am mistaken, as my ex and I share numerous similarities. I acknowledge that I am not healed, but I hope that, at least once in my life, I can make a rational, logical decision without sabotaging everything while thinking about my ex. I do not feel a strong attraction to her right now, but I hope that feelings will develop and that I will be able to open my heart, as on paper she is everything I need and desire. This leads to my dilemma and I am seeking advice. I still feel guilt as if I am betraying both my ex and this new woman. I think about my ex every day. I am not healed and remain unable to fully open up. I have communicated this to my new girlfriend, but I want to give this new relationship a chance as I sense that she is very different and logic indicates she is what I need. I comprehend the mechanisms and traps, yet I still find it incredibly challenging to maintain rational thought. My ex is a good woman, but she is undeniably toxic for my nature. How can I finally let go? Story 2. My Turkish partner 30F once insisted, no marriage, no future, while I 29M was struggling with burnout from my job. After hitting rock bottom, she suddenly dropped those demands, saying she only wanted reassurance. Now I'm questioning everything. Were her expectations manipulative? I'm lost. How about this? I 29M and my Turkish partner 30F have been together for a year and have lived together in Ireland for a few months. Generally, we have a wonderful relationship. We split chores and bills evenly, and there is little conflict. However, we have experienced tensions surrounding marriage and personal expectations that I am finding challenging to navigate. She made it clear from the beginning that not getting married would be a deal breaker. She has asked for reassurance multiple times and once broke down in tears, pleading with me to tell her now if I would not marry her eventually. She believes a year is sufficient time to determine if someone is the one, and that marriage should occur within 2 years after achieving stability. Initially, I thought her urgency was linked to wanting children, which I would understand. However, she stated that while she would like to have children someday, she is fine with not having them and is not in a hurry either way. Though she had contemplated freezing her eggs before we met, she was discouraged by her gynecologist. I have been clear that I desire a long-term future and would be happy to marry when we reach a stable situation, though for me, marriage is not a necessity. I would feel just as fulfilled staying together long-term without being married. I even suggested that we move in together first, but she initially thought it was premature, so I did not push. However, she eventually changed her mind on her own. Shortly after we moved in together, I began to experience burnout at work. At that time, I was unaware that I was struggling with undiagnosed ADHD and found myself working up to 16-hour shifts in an effort to stay afloat following a sudden restructuring. During this period, she informed me that I was not prioritizing our relationship enough and needed to be more verbally and physically affectionate, as well as to devote more time to her if I wanted our relationship to succeed. I appreciated her honesty, but when I suggested quitting my job and searching for something else, I have savings to cover rent and possess strong credentials, she was not supportive. She stated that she was both mentally and physically mature, older than I am, did not want uncertainty in her life, and that I was not considering how a career change would delay marriage, citing the high cost of weddings. She also mentioned that she expected her partner to have developed to a certain standard in every regard. I respected her transparency, but the message was clear. I could not leave without jeopardizing our relationship. So I pushed through until I reached a breaking point and then completely burned out, at which point I had no option but to resign. I also sought professional help, resulting in my ADHD diagnosis. Since my burnout, she has been fully supportive of my decision to leave and now insists that marriage simply must occur before she turns 40, with no costly wedding required. She has even expressed that she wishes I had listened to everyone and left sooner. I cannot help but feel confused and even hurt by this sudden change. Initially, her expectations seemed rigid and tied to my ability to meet a specific standard. Now those expectations appear to have vanished. When I communicated how pressured I felt to meet those expectations, she asserted that I had taken her words too seriously and that she only articulated them out of concern for marriage, reacting emotionally. That genuinely hurt because it seemed that when I approached her feeling overwhelmed and in need, she was so focused on marriage implications that she overlooked my well-being. This situation also resurfaced another issue, which I have documented in another detailed post. In summary, she previously stated that my now 80-year-old father would be expected to fly to Turkey or halfway to ask her father for his blessing. I expressed reservations regarding his health and discomfort with the tradition itself. In response, she became angry and told me that if I wished to marry her, I would make it work. I recently revisited this topic, but she almost immediately and casually remarked that asking for a blessing was not necessary at all. This shift frustrated me as well, and though I did not handle it perfectly, I attempted to explain how I felt disrespected and pressured by our initial conversation and the other issues mentioned. In response, she claimed her anger was provoked by what she perceived as my disrespectful attitude, and then she broke down in tears. She promptly informed her friends and family about our argument, and they are all upset with me. We have barely spoken since then, although she says she wants to continue our relationship if I do. She has even suggested couples therapy. Otherwise, she has stated that I should find an Irish woman instead. I do not believe she tried to manipulate me, but I do feel that unrealistic expectations were placed on me due to insecurities surrounding marriage, with little consideration for how it impacted me. Now that those expectations seem to have vanished, I am left feeling confused and guilty. How do I move forward from here? Is it normal to feel so unsettled after a partner's expectations shift like this? Is couples therapy the appropriate next step, or am I overlooking red flags that warrant my attention? In summary, my partner 30F informed me early on that not marrying would be a deal breaker and expressed that she would not support my decision to leave my high-stress job until I secured another, despite my savings, fearing it might delay our eventual marriage. Yet after I burned out and assured her of my commitment, she suddenly became fully supportive and dropped those conditions. When I explained how pressured and confused I felt by her sudden change, it resulted in a significant argument, ending with her suggesting couples therapy. Now I am left feeling confused and guilty. How should I proceed? Is therapy the right step, or do these abrupt reversals signal something more concerning?